when I was going through my own process, which was very expensive financially and also emotionally very expensive. And there was so much going on because I was still dealing with the grief of losing my mother. It was this rapid fire of events that also impacted my job. I mean, I've been a really successful, I would say, career woman, professional working in the corporate America IT industry. And it was just a succession of these events. And I remember in the post to create, because it didn't stop. I mean, there's often things that continue. And I remember thinking there should be coaches, which is, Google. And then there's a story there because I actually worked professionally with the founder of the CDC back in corporate America. I'm so grateful that I went through it then, but for me personally to develop the practice, it wasn't the right time. I was still unpacking a lot of my own journey, my own hurdles, my own story. I was hooked on things. And so it took longer than I would have liked, but I knew that that was part of my purpose. So fast forward in this world of also kind of the pandemic and people being shut down, I haven't been working in corporate America for a year and a half because of the industry and the employment situation. But it brought me back to the coaching, which I think is a huge practice. It brought me back to this entrepreneurial venture that I'm doing where I go live and I have a little, I'm selling something, but it's been more about just getting comfortable with some of my skills or kind of excavating some of the skills that I knew that were there and tapping into my creativity.
Yeah, if I can interrupt, because I want to give the listener a little bit more info on that. So Shannon has a jewelry business called Bling Me Up Shanny. And she does Facebook Lives, which are very entertaining to kind of show her product and display who she is. So that's what she was referring to in terms of the live feeds.
Yeah, it's been interesting because it's been about a little bit of rediscovering who I really was at a core. It's been about also some reinvention, which I think people go through. I think women go through, mothers go through. I know that I'm I'm 52. I'm in my early 50s, much to my, when did that happen? And I realized there's this whole kind of reinvention. And I've been doing that. You do it when you have young children to when they get a little older to 4 years. My daughter will be, probably leave the state and go somewhere to college. And so it's been about reinvention. And so that really tapped into, it's not even, I think it does make people's day. I think it's fun. It's entertaining. It almost has like a talk show vibe to it. But it's tapped into my creativity. It's given me, it's lit me up in ways that have been gone for a while. And so I think that's the story. People feel good about putting on a pair of earrings that they would never put on. I think that's especially what we all went through. I mean, this has been a tough year and a half. So that's part of my story.
What did you do before? What was your previous career?
So, and there's still, I'm still tied to it, and there will be some ties to that. I've worked in an IT selling environment. So I've worked through distribution, through the reselling community in IT, but I'm not overly, I have enough technical, but I'm really tying it to the business aspect. So, as I look forward, I think, gosh, I see a mixture of doing things, kind of a multiple streams, if you will, and just things that I enjoy. I realized maybe I wasn't doing enough that filled my own soul, the nourishment piece, or played into my purpose, quite frankly. I think that was a challenge. And now I'm seeing that. That doesn't mean I'm not nervous about it because there's still, you have to, in the adult world, you have to pay adult bills. So that's
and it's like I often will say to my clients, there's no better way to clean the slate than with a divorce. So, it kind of cleans the slate. It's painful, but it will clean the slate. And then now you have a blank slate that you can recreate your life from. So definitely sounds like that's how it has been a healing process for you, but it's gotten you to this place where you're able to open up to some of these other and create multiple streams of income for yourself,
absolutely
various passions that you have.
Yeah. And I've created a team. I mean, I think there's been other women who have gravitated, and I've kind of developed this little group. The Bling Me Up Shanny is funny because I've never been called Shanny in my life, but maybe by two people. But now people call me Shanny. I think that's very funny. And it just seems like, of course, that's what I would call it, Bling Me Up Shanny. And if you're not old enough to think of the Star Trek reference, I mean, that's where it kind of was inspired by. But I've hustled so hard over this past year and a half. In a different way that I hadn't done. And it's been really kind of, and even the whole online world. I mean, I have made some amazing friendships and joined some amazing networking groups with women, even in the course where everything is now, you can at least see people, you can have a connection. It's been interesting. It's been a really I just, like I keep saying, who would have thunk it? I'm kind of like shocked. It's been great.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know you mentioned a minute ago that when you went through your own divorce, you kind of had the thought that there should be coaches for this. And you mentioned that you just so happened to Google and find out that a previous coworker was ran the CDC, which stands for Certified Divorce Coaching. I think it's Certified Divorce Coach. I don't know if they call it a school or what they call it, but anyway, it's the program that we both did to get certified as divorce coaches. So now you're kind of rethinking that. When you think over this past 5 years, the Shannon that took the course the first time and the Shannon that you are now, I heard you say that you kind of could see that you were kind of hooked up on certain things and really angry and caught up in that whole process. How would you compare and contrast you now versus you then?
Well, and again, I think if I look back, there was not a whole lot I could do in the beginning to change a lot of that. I mean, my mother passed pretty quickly, even though, once we found out she was very sick. And then really the wheels did fall off. And there were nuances. I mean, my marriage, we were, interfaith, international, from a different country, been here a long time. Family has come to visit. It was a really interesting time. I mean, I say interesting. It's book worthy in some ways. And the wheels really did fall off. It was just, I think marriage is challenging. My parents are married 52 years. I saw a great example, but I saw work, a lot of hard work. And, it was very clear, and we had our challenges, but it was very clear that we were not going to rebound, that it was an implosion. And so when I look back, some of it I couldn't avoid. I mean, it was a traumatic time because we were also dealing with the grief of my mother. And I was then also helping with my father, who, by the way, was helping very much with me. I mean, people say, oh, you're a great daughter. What my father brings to our current family is that's worthy of conversation right there. But what I realized is that I was definitely hooked. I was definitely, I couldn't get past certain things. I didn't understand. I didn't recognize myself oftentimes. And because it was, there's things that happen to your physical body, your brain, the chemistry, the science behind that. And those are the things I still think you have to wade through those waters. But I didn't know that I thought I was pretty evolved in terms of things, but I just didn't have a lot of the tools. And how I am today, I still have my challenges. I mean, it's not like it's easy. And we still have some challenges in the post-divorce world. I think that I just have tools and I have resources and people and coaches that I can unhook from some of that stuff quicker. And I've learned that. And I've also you have to go through some of the stuff. You have to go through some of the grief with the loss of a marriage and the perceptions. And then the impact on, in our case, we have one child, but the impact was very real. I did a lot of things right, but I did some things that I didn't do right. I made mistakes. So I'm just much more reflective.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's when I work with clients that are at all stages of the divorce process. Most clients come to me, either they're right at the end of the marriage or they're just, they're embarking on the initial phase of the divorce process or in the midst of it. And there's so much high emotion that goes on during that time and fear. It's really based in a fear of an unknown future. And it just kind of brings out a lot of emotion that maybe feels overwhelming, and people will say and do things they regret during that time. So, that's what I'm hearing, that you're owning that part of it, but you've used the term unhook. So, and I'm thinking from the listener's perspective, that would be really helpful to know how you did that. So if you can think of an example, maybe not in your relationship with your ex, but maybe in another area of your life where you were able to use that and what that looked like.
And it's interesting because you might remember the story too from the course where they talk about the antique or the vintage heirloom scarf or sweater. I've used it with my friends or even people that I've coached. And just that visual of you've given something beautiful. And let's say it's an heirloom sweater and you're walking, you get hooked on the barbed wire fence. And if you keep walking, it's going to unravel. I love that visual. That actually has helped me. I think about that visual a lot. So if something aggravates me, I can think of something recently, as I was in kind of my old world or what my working or an interview process, and hearing something and having a conversation that just wasn't in alignment with how I saw, And I think a couple of years ago, I would have sat on that longer. I would have maybe
ruminated on it.
I would have ruminated. I would have, I was very impressed. I was impressed with myself because I had it. I felt it. And I almost coached myself. Okay. How are you going to unhook? Feel it. So it was a little bit of really just connecting the science to kind of the actual event. And it works. It does work. It takes time. And there's days things might impact me longer. I mean, I'm a work in progress like everybody, but I do feel like just that concept is good.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I'm clear. So when you feel yourself getting hooked and the unraveling for you is the ruminating. So you're ruminating and the scarf is unraveling. So using that metaphor, you recognize when you're doing the ruminating and you unhook from that. You say, you know what? I'm not going to ruminate. I'm not going to unravel my sweater anymore.